Welcome back to another Icebreaker. Today we're here with my guest Jay, special ed helper here at the Met High School. Introduce yourself.
I'm Jay. I am a special ed instructor here at the Met High School, and I am a true crime fanatic.
True that. But today we got the infamous Casey Anthony case that happened between 2008 to 2013. This case is still kind of very sensitive topic for many because of how it ended off and how it kind of was hard for like the verdict. Just a bunch of lies and a manipulated like court kind of led to a alleged. I'm not gonna say I think she killed her or think she didn't. An alleged killer off the hook. So
I'm excited to talk to you for the next hour about this.
we can't do an hour. We gotta do 20 minutes.
20 minutes it is.
20 minutes it is. But I'm gonna go over the timeline of this event, what happened, what took place, who Casey Anthony was, and who her kid was, and how it was just a big mess, and how lying can get you pretty far if you're pretty good at it. So I'm gonna start off with 2008, June 16th. This case lasts a long time for a case, which is prevalent for many nowadays because the court system is so long and how the process is. So yeah. So on June 16th, 2008, Kaylee Anthony is reported missing, last seen alive. So Kaylee Anthony is the kid of Casey Anthony. She was getting watched by her grandparents at the time, but her grandparents kind of let her go for a bit because they were kind of done with Casey Anthony's like lifestyle. So they gave her back to the mother, which should have happened in the first place. But the grandparents were nervous, and the grandma reported the kid missing because she hasn't heard of the kid for a long time. The mother's been unresponsive. A lot of stuff has just gone on in like this month period. It took her a long time, but in the long run, I could see where she's coming from because of where, like, you know, concerning and just like a wellness check. It was pretty much a wellness check, but she was last reported seen on June 16th, and then on July 15th, which is like almost a month later, she's reported missing. Anything you want to say during this time? Because you were alive during this time, so were you interested in this case at all?
Sure was. Yeah, like Casey Anthony was just like a known liar throughout that time period to her family. Like she had told her family that she had worked at Universal Studios, which wasn't true. She was dating this DJ, Tony Lazzaro from Long Island.
Absolute bum.
He kind of was, but like later on in the case you find out like he's like just a dude. He's like a bro. And so like, but he's spending a lot of time with her. She's going to his house a lot and leaving Kaylee over at her parents' house, the grandparents' house. And so that's kind of where like this story picks up, is that Casey's parents, who used to babysit for Kaylee all the time while mom was out hanging out with her DJ friend Tony Lazzaro, all of a sudden they stop babysitting her, and a month goes by, right? And all of a sudden they're just like, how come we don't have this kid anymore to babysit? And so they start asking a lot more questions. That's why you see, you know, the last time being June 16th, and then July 15th being the day that like her parents
Or like, what's going on here?
Yeah, and they call the police.
Yeah.
They're like, damn. Yeah.
Yeah, but the day after she was reported missing, Casey Anthony was arrested for child neglection, and that's kind of weird because, you know, that obviously means they didn't find Kaylee Anthony anywhere, so they arrested the mother for child neglection because she was nowhere to be found. On July 17th, officers search Anthony's car, and a dog picks up a human decomposition, which is a body's been in the car, dead somewhere. But this was later in the court case just a pizza, which is kind of weird. There was a pizza box in the back, but who knows? She could just put it there for planted evidence. But yeah, that's very big evidence in this case.
Well, and I think it's interesting too because after that June to July like block of time, Casey Anthony is going around telling the police and investigators that her kid was with a nanny. That Kaylee was out with this
this nanny.
Zenaida Gonzalez.
You want to tell?
She
about this nanny.
She would call her Zanny the nanny, which for like street lingo usually is like associated with Xanax. So, not to jump down a rabbit hole, but it's possible that she could have been giving Kaylee Anthony, Xanax at times to get her to go to sleep or whatever it is. Kaylee's 3 years old, so she might have had a hard time with her, like going to bed or stuff like that, or just like maybe she just missed the lifestyle. Casey Anthony's 22 years old at this point, so she's she's probably on MySpace or the Facebook, and she's missing out on what all of her friends are doing, and she's realizing, shoot, like I have this kid, I can't live that life. And so she keeps telling the police, even in that 911 call, I left her with the nanny and I haven't seen her in a month. And the police are just kind of like, well, that's weird. But she had come up with this name, Zenaida Gonzalez.
Which is two names in the same neighborhood, but it was later found out it could have been just like two different names on mailboxes, and she just put them together.
Sure could. When the police ended up investigating that, there were only like 3 or 4 Zenaida Gonzalez's that actually existed in the United States.
Coincidentally, one lived in the place, but not, and when they interviewed her, she had no idea who Casey Anthony was and who her kid was. And she was kind of like just new to the neighborhood as well.
And so if you're into Usual Suspects, we like to say that she Kaiser Sose'd her way into this name, because later on, Kaylee's body is found in this wooded area, and it's between 2 houses, and the names on the mailboxes between those 2 houses. One house is Zenaida, and the other house is Gonzalez. So she probably just put those names together and made a nice little like Zenaida Gonzalez. Like that.
That is a good transition into our next found evidence, which this guy, I don't know who this worker is out there, but he found a worker went to go relieve himself and found skeletal remains, and he picked up the skull with the stick and then put the skull down, right? But then he started to repeatedly poke the bones and started destroying the evidence, which was later found out which was Kaylee Anthony's remains in that wood space, which we were just talking about between the 2 houses. And this guy's a total tool, in my opinion. Like, if you just see bones, you got to report it. I know you're making yourself the number 1 suspect in that opinion, but maybe anonymously call it, just not like absolute destroy the remains and be like, oh, I just relieved myself on the shift and I just destroyed some evidence.
He poked the skull a few times with a stick. That's the storyline. And as this case started to pick up ground, and people started talking about Casey Anthony and Kaylee, it became a very popular case during that time period. And this guy thought he had hit the jackpot by being the guy that found the skull and also destroying the evidence, to the point where he had called his friends and family and had said like, hey, like I hit the big time by finding this dead girl's body, which is like sick. But he thought for sure that like he was going to become famous as being the guy that discovered Kaylee Anthony. Yeah, he is a tool. I guess you're right. But
yeah.
Yeah.
We're just gonna leave it at that. This is the part of the case where we started to go into the judicial system, a very long and yearly kind of case where some stuff is made up by some people just to throw it out there. And we'll get later on to that with the lawyers and stuff. But prosecutors on April 13th, 2009, we're talking about the death penalty on Casey Anthony. And then May 9th, the jury selection begins, meaning they're starting to talk about if she's guilty, if she's not, starting all that kind of long process. Then a year later, this is 2 years later after the death penalty talk, Anthony becomes ill in jury and calls the court into a recess for the day, so meaning they skip the day in court and change the date on the court date. Do you want to talk about
which part?
Who Casey Anthony's lawyer this guy is?
So Casey Anthony has a lawyer. His name is Jose Baez, and he he's like infamous now, but like he is, as he represents her, there's like many things along the way that he does to just like kind of throw this jury off, right? So there's all this evidence that's there that's saying, you know, Casey is a liar. She's a pathological liar. She's lied about her work. She's lied about like just like her lifestyle, all sorts of different things. And Jose Baez, like, he basically like pulls the pin on a grenade.
Throws a rape card in there.
Yeah, and he says somewhere in there in his opening statement, or when he's questioning Casey Anthony's dad, he basically says like Casey doesn't show any remorse for her daughter being dead because she was molested as a kid by George Anthony. And so if you know a little bit about George Anthony, her dad, he was a cop for like many years, like decades, and it doesn't seem like that's really something that happened in their family dynamic. But the interesting part about Jose Baez is that he says that, and the whole room kind of just like explodes. The jury hears it, everything, and then just almost to perfection, he never mentions it again. Period. So George Anthony takes the stand. He starts questioning him about stuff that's completely unrelated to this molestation charge that he like puts out there into space. So again, like he just never mentions it again. But what that does is that puts like this thought process into the jury's mind, where they're like, okay, like this could be a reason why she's not showing any remorse, why she's not sad, right? So Jose Baez like just like blows this thing up. He actually. And I don't even know if I told you this, but like he actually, or if we talked about this, but he actually, instead of talking about the molestation stuff, he turns to the dad when he's on the stand, and he starts talking about how the dad had a suicide attempt after Kaylee had died. He had taken a bunch of pills and he had drank.
But didn't he, when the dad was testifying, didn't he not mention a single word about getting molested or
exactly,
anything?
Yeah.
Or
but what I'm saying is that he instead
tries twisting like his
he
words.
twisted it into, hey, like, did you try to take your life after Kaylee died? So he was trying to make dad seem like he was mentally unstable, like
the villain.
The dad did try to take his own life because he was just like so upset about Kaylee being dead that he had taken a bunch of pills, and then he had drank on those pills, and he had survived this attempt to take his life. And so Jose Baez, the lawyer for Casey Anthony, just does this to him. Like, instead of he accuses him of molestation, and then instantly is like, didn't you try to kill yourself? Like, he automatically puts doubt in the jury's mind about like the whole family dynamic, like everything.
Yeah,
but never mentions the molestation again, even to the point where at the closing arguments, he had wanted to mention it, but the judge had said no, because you never provided any proof or any evidence that this actually happened. So like, it's so weird, but he just threw this curveball. I know I went on forever there about it.
Yeah, we good. But
yeah, it's a lot to just like sit through and just be like, wow, because that court case was so long and just so boring.
Yeah, but that's a main point, because it shows that like there was a lot of lies going on. Well, some true lies, but some like more like, I will overdo the truth. Like, he tried taking his life, so that means he's probably guilty of something or something like that, to make people feel like doubt in the jury, to make Casey Anthony look like a hero and just like a mom trying to, her kids lost, not like trying to take the blame off Casey Anthony. But that's obviously what a lawyer does, but it's like lying lawfully, kind of. But I'm gonna go in. We got like a wacky story soon about how Casey Anthony, I don't know if you want to say it now or later on, led at her alleged job in Universal to place.
Yeah, well, somewhere in the investigation, right, the police are trying to figure out, like, they're trying to collect their evidence when it comes to Casey, and we'll make a long story short. That like she had told her friends for years upon years that she had worked at Universal Studios. You know, she's literally driving in her car before Kaylee is missing, driving to Universal Studios. Now, none of that is true. She doesn't work at Universal Studios. She was probably going out.
She was doing hot body contests at bars and stuff.
Yeah, well, yeah, she is. That is a piece of this too. That's like what made this case so interesting. So she would tell her friends, like, God, like, work is so crazy. She was just making up all this, like, all these lies. So the police were like, take us to your job at Universal. And the police didn't know that she was lying about that job. So she was like, okay, I'll take you. And so she ends up going to Universal Studios, and she gets to the front desk, and she's like demanding to get in. And they're like, we don't know who you are. Like, they're just like, but eventually, like, somebody in charge.
Oh, spooky.
Somebody in charge says, she's with police officers. Let's just let her in. Let's figure out what this lady's talking about. And she goes, cool. And so she's like, she takes like the elevator to like a random floor. As she's like walking through, she's like waving to people like she knows them. Like, it's like just surreal. And then she goes down this hallway, and she gets to like a dead end. And then she basically turns around to the police and says,
I don't work here.
Yeah, like, I actually don't work here. I've never worked here. So, like, these were all red flags, like, along
from the
way.
beginning.
From the beginning.
Like this hot body contest where her daughter's dead. Like, a mother doesn't go out and do that. Like,
her daughter had been missing for quite some time, and yeah, she entered a hot body contest,
which is very interesting.
At a bar and club. But that's what made this court case interesting, is the fact that, like, she was a 22-year-old woman. Like, this is the age of, like, the beginning of, like, social media. Not really the beginning, but, like, we're talking 2008, 2009.
It was like outlaw times on social media.
Twitter was like a buzz with her. She was an attractive 22-year-old like woman. Unfortunately, the reality is, like, as Americans or as people, like, they're attracted to a little girl missing too. Her daughter's 3 years old. We saw the same thing with JonBenet Ramsey. We saw the same thing with Matt.
And it was kind of like with JonBenet Ramsey, where people were like, "Oh, there's this little girl that's dead and stuff, or missing, and they can't find her, and it's like by the parents, and they're like all freaked out." Like, it's just like there's a lot of similar cases, and I feel like humans have a weird kind of thing in their brain where they find like missing people or like killers on the loose, like, kind of interesting, like, to follow. Like, it's just kind of like human nature, I guess, in a way.
Wish the lights would turn back on.
I know, it's weird. As soon as we talk about like a dead person, we're good. See? We're good. We're back. But yeah, it's just one of those human nature kind of things. But we're gonna get to the other part of this case where Casey Anthony is sentenced to 4 years, and she has also fined $1,000 on July 7th, 2011. But
well, so that in itself is interesting too, right? So she's found innocent of killing her daughter.
Yep.
Right. So, like, at the end of the day, nobody really knows. Nobody has an idea of, like, who is the actual killer of Caylee Anthony. But they do find. The jury do find her guilty of lying to police, right? They put her this whole escapade on with Universal Studios, and so, like, it's kind of like getting like a second place prize to the whole thing, that they're like, yeah, you didn't kill her, but you also wasted our time. So they gave her 4 years in jail, but because she had already done time served since the court case was going on and she was in jail,
she got released.
She gets released at that point, which also, like, sparks a lot of anger.
It's like, what
with
is
the whole
going
side
on?
Of people, right? Because if people found her to be guilty, and the media,
this is where the media starts to ramp up after this. Like, people after she gets released from jail because she served time and stuff, like, it starts to ramp up because people start to speculate. I know it's a pretty, like, bad take on my part, but I feel like they should have gave more time for this court stuff, because they should have gathered more evidence and more, like, truth behind the lies that they were spewing. But that's all you could do at the end of the day, is kind of hear everybody out and then make a verdict as a judge. And they obviously picked she was innocent, but yeah.
I agree with you. It's just that, like, there were too many people that screwed up along the way.
It's like JonBenet Ramsey, where they let everybody in the house and they let everybody touch the evidence, and then they were just, like, too much going on.
The police didn't do a good job of, like, questioning her,
securing the crime scene,
her accountable. Securing the crime scene would have been tough, though, because, like, they didn't have a crime scene up until, homeboy ended up poking the skull with a stick, like, repeatedly, and ruining that evidence. So you have that too, and then you have a jury that what they saw was an act, essentially. So, Casey would put on the sad face, and then once the jury left,
yeah.
they would have videos of her like
smiling and like being
laughing,
happy and like
because it
shaking
was
people's
an act.
hands. It was all like just like this thing, a game to her, pretty much. It looked like a game. Like she would be, oh, I'm gonna be going crying in court today, and then after court, I'm gonna go out and do hot body contests and go to my fake job and start. Like it's just like it infuriates people because they see what she's doing outside of like this case, and like you're supposed to be grieving, but instead you're doing other things like smiling after court and being happy after court. Like it's just like very infuriating to a lot of people. Yeah, but that's kind of where our case ends, but it's still kind of open-ended because, you know, people have their speculation. Some people think she's innocent and like dad killed her.
One of the things that they say that ended that court case that Jose Baez did a really good job with is that he showed a picture of Kaylee Anthony at the family house, and she was at the back door, and it's a picture of her opening the back door, and you can see their family pool in the background.
Oh yeah, that's what they speculate,
And
where she
so-
fell in and she
Exactly.
died, and then the whole family covered it.
And they had a hard time covering it, probably because Casey was such a bad liar that they were like, all right, let's get our story straight. You know, Zanny the nanny is also a term that like just doesn't sit well.
It's 100% a
Me.
term. I think it's not like
street
a
lingo.
it's not like a person. It's literally probably like a drug or like probably like a lie that is like notorious in the streets. Like, oh, she's getting watched by Zanny the nanny right now. You know, it was nice having you on. I liked you like a lot of you had a lot of talking points. But yeah,
Thanks, Danny.
yeah, no problem. It was good having you on. So
This is great to be here.
this is another icebreaker, and we're out.